What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to change the rear brakes on a 2014 Nissan Altima. There's probably about 5 years of Nissan Altimas that this will work for. May even work for more than that. Alright, first thing we have here is a jack stand. I only do one side at a time, so I only needed to use one jack stand. Alright, and next, the floor jack. You could probably use any jack, but the floor jack for me is preferred. I got an assortment of sockets here. You'll actually only need 2 or 3 sizes, but I just move them all around with me. Alright, and then a ratchet. That's a 1/2 inch composite ratchet from Harbor Freight. You'll need a 3/4 wrench, as I couldn't fit an impact in there, so I had to take it off by hand. I have a wire brush there, some caliper lube, the back brake hardware right here, and something to squeeze the piston back in the caliper. This is what I've been using, and it works pretty good. Normally I'd use a C-clamp, but I was unable to locate it. There's a few other things that might be useful. Dead blow hammer, maybe an impact wrench for taking off the lugs, breaker bar. My back brakes are actually pretty corroded, and of course some brake cleaner. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first thing you should do is, if you're going to take the wheel off by hand with hand tools, you know, breaker bar, socket, that kind of thing, you want to go ahead and loosen the lugs before you jack it up. But I will be using the impact to loosen them today, so I'll just go ahead and jack it up. Alright, and after you jack it up, go ahead and place your jack stand. Alright, and next, just go ahead and remove the wheel. Alright, then what I like to do is I like to take the wheel off, and I like to stick it under the car. So if it was to ever fall, it's just one more thing to help keep the car off the ground. Alright, if you're just replacing pads, there's these 2 bolts. There's one right here and one down here at the bottom. You just need to remove those. Unfortunately, I can't get the impact in here. The socket I'm using is a 9/16. You can go ahead and remove that by hand, unless you have some kind of small air impact or something. That one broke loose very, very easy. Well, scary easy. That one was also pretty easy. These are really long. It's quite a bit different than the front. Pull it out instead of the side, they got a little grease on them. I like to add a little more to that before I put them back. Make sure I set them aside so they don't get dirty. And there's a second one. They seem to be identical, so it doesn't seem to matter which way you put them in. And that's all you got to do to get this off. If you're changing the rotor like I am, you just go ahead and set this guy aside, and you'll continue taking the rest of the bracket off. I'm actually going to be painting these calipers, so there'll be another video on that. on how I got them ready to do that. But so whenever I get this off, it'll probably come back and it should be painted. You can fight them pads out, or you can just take the whole thing off. You have to use a 3/4 wrench to get the top bolt, or a short socket. I unfortunately don't have any short sockets, but it's hard to get the ratchet in there. Maybe if I had some swivels or something. You may want to go ahead and pull these little rubber things off and set them to the side too. They just slip off. They're actually very easy to put on. They do sell new ones if you have a torn one or something. These bolts on the back of the caliper, I don't know if you'll be able to even see them even if I take the camera back there. This is where the breaker bar can come in handy. This is the bolt right here that you need the wrench for. It's just right behind the dust shield and close to where you took off the caliper bolt. You can't fit a ratchet in there with a deep well socket. You may not be able to even with a short socket. So that's something to consider. This top bolt here is where I like to use the dead blow. So I ain't going crazy with the wrench. These back ones for some reason get pretty corroded. You know, this car's only three years old and has the brakes of a much older car in the back here. Look how corroded the end of that bolt is. I don't know if it'll focus or not, but it's pretty corroded. Alright, and after you finally break that bolt loose, if they're corroded like this, I am in a state where they put down a lot of salt in the winter, so it might be more important to wash your car in the winter on a nice day than it would be somewhere else. Alright, and after you get the bolt loose, I had to apply a little heat to this one to get it out. The bracket should just come right off. Might even fall if you're not careful. But if you're just changing pads, if you bought a good quality set of pads, it'll come with new pieces of hardware, so you'd have to do this anyway. It's also a good idea to probably go ahead and replace your hardware. Not all brake pads come with it. This set I got for the back did. That bolt took a little heat to get off. I had to hit it with the torch. Alright, and the pads, you can just squeeze them out. And since you're not reusing the hardware, you can go ahead and pull it out too. If it doesn't want to come out, like that one's kind of stuck in there with some crud, just get a screwdriver and pry it out. Just try not to kill your bracket. Finally got it out. Alright, and actually I'm going to go clean these up and paint these. So it'll come back to these being dry. When you're ready to change the rotor, so a lot of times they're pretty stuck. What I like to do is just hit it in this corner, and it just comes right off. Alright, just put the new one on here. I also would like to add that I already did clean this off with brake cleaner. I wiped all the brake pad surfaces to make sure I didn't get any oil or grease on it. It's also got this little plug that you need to move over. Alright, you can see I painted them, so it's a few hours later. They're just dry to the touch. They're not completely dry yet. But you just go ahead and you snap the brake hardware on. It's pretty easy. Sometimes they don't fit perfectly, but you just got to shove them a little harder. Alright, and after you get it on, go ahead and mount your bracket. Alright, and when replacing the bracket, there's no real secret to lining it up. And I also use a little bit of blue thread locker. Even if it may or may not be required, but to me, you know, a little tube of thread locker is only a couple dollars, and it's cheap insurance. Makes me sleep at night. Alright, now to get those started, tighten them both up pretty evenly. If you do one way tighter than the other, it'll actually make the bracket uneven. Alright, whenever it's time for pads, I like to put a little grease anywhere that the pad will contact the housing or anything else. But make sure that you don't get it on the front of the pad, on the braking material. Alright, the pads go in relatively easy. And that's really just it. Alright, and if you haven't squeezed the piston on the caliper back in yet, now's a good time. Alright, putting these little boots back on in between where the pin and the bracket where they connect. They're very easy to put on. You take the bigger, wider end and you just kind of, I don't know, I like to hook it on the bottom first and you just push it up and just kind of wiggle it around and it'll clip into the place. And then whenever you put your caliper back on, you just got to kind of squeeze them in so they line up correctly and don't get popped back off. Not hard, just line them up with the holes. Alright, and then with these, I'm using a little bit of blue Loctite again. I go ahead and I put some new grease on them. This is, you know, the Permatex Ultra Disc brake lube, caliper lube. And I go ahead and I just stick them back in their hole. If you have the boot lined up, that is. There we go. And put a little bit of Loctite on there, just a drop. Do the same thing with the bottom. Alright, and now with the little boot, after you put the screw through, likely, it only did it on one side, but the little rubber boot will push down from the screw being through. You just kind of wiggle it back up over the bottom of the screw and it'll stay in place.
Sorry, I don't have any technical terms for putting on the boots. Alright, and after you get everything all tightened up, you go ahead and you put the wheel back on. I'll leave links in the description, even for the caliper paint, everything you'll need. Even the brakes and rotors. I think these rotors look really neat, so I went ahead and got them. Alright, yeah, so all you gotta do is put your wheel back. Make sure you tighten your lugs in the star pattern, and you're good to go. Now, if you have any questions or comments, I'd really like to hear them, and I will try my best to answer everyone back. And anyway, I appreciate you watching, and if you would mind hitting that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, take it easy, and I'll see you around.